Bueno. Seguimos ahora con Chris Gate de la Sunlight Foundation. Probablemente conozcan o no conozcan directamente Sunlight Foundation, pero hace un tiempito hubo todo un escandalete con PolitiWhoops. ¿Conocen la cuenta de Twitter? Es como nuestro @tweet borrados, pero de verdad y con buena leche. Básicamente lo que hacen es que van traqueando cuentas de políticos, que cuando de repente alguno borra algo, uno puede seguir el stream de tweets borrados. Es bastante interesante. Hace unas semanas que venía temblando todo y Twitter terminó cerrando y impidiéndoles el acceso al API a esas cuentas por unos argumentos bastante raros. Pero bueno, Sunlight Foundation lo que trata de hacer es agregar transparencia y accountability, que creo que se traduce como responsabilidad, a la política o los políticos en Estados Unidos. La presentación me parece que está buena y me parece que es interesante para entender qué podemos traer también de esto nosotros para acá. Así que los dejo con Chris.
Hola, buenos dias. My name is Chris Gates, and I'm president of the Sunlight Foundation, and it's an honor to be here. I want to take a little bit of time to tell you about the work that we do at Sunlight. I'm going to try to speak not too fast so that our translators can keep up. But before I tell you a little bit about Sunlight, I want to start with a little bit of history. So 100 years ago in the United States, we were in the middle of what people call the progressive era. The progressive era in the United States ran from the 1890s to the 1920s. And it's really when America's democracy grew up. It's where the good government movement came from. It's where a bunch of political reform came from. But it was a time when we sort of hit the correct button on our democracy. In the late 1800s in America, our democracy was very much broken. And the reformers, the progressive reformers of that time, changed politics, changed government, changed the way we ran elections, created the good government movement, and fundamentally changed what democracy looked like in the United States. One of the leaders of that progressive movement was an attorney named Louis Brandeis, who later became a justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. And in 1913, he wrote a very famous article where he said that sunlight is said to be the best disinfectant against corruption and against the things that went wrong in our democracy. And that quote is where we at the Sunlight Foundation got our name. We were founded 9 years ago by Mike Klein and Ellen Miller, and the organization was originally created to bring sunlight as a disinfectant to the federal government in the United States. And so originally all of our work was very much focused on bringing more transparency and accountability to government and politics, but with a focus at the federal level. Over the years, that's changed considerably, and so our focus is now on 3 different sets of activities. So the first is that we are leaders in the open gov, open data world, and so we work at all levels in the United States and all across the world on a regular basis to promote more open data policy and practice in government, to encourage government to open more data to citizens, and to encourage governments at all levels to use data to better manage their departments and their functions. So the open data, open gov world is a fundamental part of who we are and what we do. The second piece of what we focus on is political reform. And there is no doubt from our perspective that the political process that we have in the United States is broken. Not enough, the United States still has the lowest voter turnout of any industrialized democracy on earth. And it's not because people don't understand when elections are held. It's not because they're apathetic. It's because the system doesn't seem to be responsive to them. There's so much money. The joke in the presidential election that's going on in the United States right now is that it's a BYOB election, bring your own billionaire. And all the candidates have a billionaire in their pocket. And when normal voters see that, it's very dispiriting. And so we firmly believe that we've got to find ways to reform our political process to get money out of the system, to increase transparency, to open up systems so that people can use technology in a way to participate in the political process in a way that they've not been able to do before. And then the third big stream of activity for us is data and tools. One of the things that makes Sunlight a very unique organization in the United States is that we have a team of civic technologists, a team of internal hackers, and we build tools and sites, and we use scrapers, and we create mobile apps, and we're actually able to take data and build tools in real time to get things done. And so those are the three areas that we really are focusing on as we move forward. And then the approach that we have, is there any way for us to move that up? Hold on. There we go, perfect. The approach that we have is a hybrid approach, and we're really a hybrid organization. So we've got, there we go. So we've got three parts of our organization. One is labs that I just talked about. So Sunlight Labs has some of the most amazing civic technologists that you've ever met. They are incredibly good at what they do. They're the folks that use civic technology to build the tools that make our work possible. But then we've also got a policy team, and Julia is here, who's the head of our international team. But we have policy experts in all of these levels, and we advocate for reform, we advocate for open data at all of these levels. We do policy analysis, we lobby, we do all of those things. And then we have a communications team that runs social media campaigns, uses our tools in the United States to promote the issues that we work on. But we also uniquely have writers that create original content, and we drive the media. So sometimes the media is taking the lead, and sometimes the media takes the lead from the journalism that we do internally. And then we function at all of these levels. And I recognize we had a conversation with some folks at the media fair yesterday that the way we use the word state in the United States is different than the way most people around the world use the word state. For us, a state is a subset of our federal system. But just as an example of the work that we do at all these levels, so at the international level, we currently have big projects going on both here in Argentina and in Ukraine, where we're doing capacity building within the NGO community, the journalism community, and with government to help people use data and tools in better ways, and to help them better understand how they can do policy advocacy around all of these issues. At the federal level, the national level in the United States, we are very active in lobbying our Congress on political reform and trying to open up the political process. But we also are very active in using FOIA as a tool to open up more data. And in fact, earlier this year, we had a huge victory where after a 1.5 year long fight with the federal government and finally threatening a lawsuit, we convinced our federal government to release what are called EDIs, Enterprise Data Inventories. And these enterprise data inventories were literally the list of the data that each department in our national government held. That had never been made public before, and so it was a huge victory for the open data, open gov community when we were able to get those released. That was a fight that we spent 1.5 years on. With states, again, a subset for us of our national government. We have a tool called Open States, and it's the only tool that exists in the United States that allows citizens and journalists to track any bill in any of our 50 states and figure out when it's coming up for a vote, what the vote was, when the next hearing would be. This is an amazingly sophisticated tool. It's the tool that everybody uses to track state legislation in the United States, and it's one of our highlights. And then, and then at the local level, we are starting to grow our work at the local level in the United States, and we have just announced our partnership with Bloomberg Philanthropies. And Bloomberg Philanthropies is the philanthropic arm of Michael Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York City. And so our team will literally spend the next 3 years working with 100 mid-sized cities across America to bring open gov and open data practice to those cities. And from the Bloomberg perspective, a mid-sized city is 100,000 to 1 million people. And so we will spend a huge amount of time working with those communities. And so those are just some examples of the things that we do across all of those different geographic areas. So it's really important to say that one of the key audiences for the work that we do is journalists. One of the key users of all of our data and tools are journalists. And so this is just a sampling of some of the coverage that we've received just in the last week, where again, journalists use data and tools from the Sunlight Foundation to create better stories. And one of the fields that we hope, and again, we spoke with some folks about this at the media fair yesterday as well, that a small field in the United States that we hope grows quickly is a specific field called data journalism, where journalists actually use data to better tell their stories. There is some of that happens in the United States, but we think that there could be much more. I think that within the field of journalism, there can still be a focus that investigative journalism means asking people lots of questions, and we think that investigative journalism can also mean using data and creative analysis of data to tell stories. And so this is a huge piece of what we do, and the journalists that we work with, for instance, we have a tool called Influence Explorer, which is the only real-time tracker of federal campaign contributions in the United States. So you can literally, it's an amazing tool. You can put in alerts by contributor, or by the candidate, or by the office holder, or by state, or by district, and you will get email alerts anytime a contribution is made to that candidate or from that person, and it can happen multiple times a day because we scrape that data multiple times every day. That's a tool that reporters use constantly. We have another tool called Scout, which is the most sophisticated way to track federal legislation. Again, it's an immense amount of data scraping, but it creates a tool that people can use in real time that's fairly easy and straightforward to use to track the way bills progress through Congress. And then another example of one of our tools that gets a huge amount of press is that we have a tool called Political Party Time. And so what we have done is crowdsourced a site, and we ask people to send us information about political fundraisers that happen all over the country. And if you can track political fundraisers, you start to figure out where people are getting their money from, who their biggest supporters are, what geographic areas are most responsible for raising money. And so Political Party Time is a tool that journalists use all the time to do their work. And that partnership for us is really important. So I'll finish with 3 quick points and 3 things that we keep in mind about our work every day. The first is a vibrant conversation that is taking place in the United States, and I know it takes place around the world as well. And that is that there will always need to be a balance between transparency and privacy. I was recently in a meeting in San Francisco with folks with the Omidyar Network, and Pierre Omidyar funds people both who advocate for more privacy and who advocate for more transparency. And we had a really good conversation about the fact that there is no simple, clean answer. We are not radical transparency advocates. We recognize that not everything needs to be available, and that in some ways the process of governing is figuring out where you need to be transparent and where people's privacy matters. But that debate will be an ongoing debate, and there's never going to be a clean, one-stop answer to that question. The second thing I'd say that we keep in mind every day is that the communities of open data, civic tech, and journalism are all fairly distinct places, and sometimes open data and journalism can become at odds with each other. Sometimes civic tech and open data can come at odds with each other. And we think that the great progress that can be made in this work is when the worlds of open data, civic tech, and journalism come together. That is sometimes much easier to say than it is to do, but we think it's critically important for all of us to remember that and find creative ways to collaborate and work together. And then the last thing I'd say is that in the transparency world, it is easy sometimes to focus on the bad news. When a government restricts a piece of data, when a newspaper gets censored. But it's really important from our perspective to understand that in the broad fight for transparency, there is no doubt in our mind that our side is winning. I really do believe that social media and new forms of communication technology have fundamentally changed the civic compact that citizens have with their governments and with their elected office holders and with their candidates, and the earth really only turns one way. And the truth is that we have victories large and small all across the world every day, and as hard as the fight is, it's important for people in this movement to remember that we're actually winning. And if you look at any piece of polling data, people are on our side. People want their governments to be more open. They want to know more about who's contributing to political campaigns. And so the question isn't, whether we will win. The question is how hard the fight is going to be. But it's important to remember that we're really winning when we come to this conversation. And so just finally, I'd say that if there's ever anything that we can do to be helpful to you, please call us, email me, email Julia. Everything that we do is open source. All of our data is available. When I talk about data and tools, we have incredibly powerful APIs. We have 7,000 active keys for our APIs. We give away our data for free. Anybody who wants to use it to create their own tools and to do their own analysis, it's all there for them to do. So if there's ever anything that we can do to be helpful to you, please be in touch with us. And then lastly, Julia, who runs our international work, is doing a workshop at noon in Sala A on FOIA and FOIA efforts both in the United States and around the world. We'd love to see you at that workshop, but thank you very much for the time today. Muchas gracias.